What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for another Tottenham update for you guys today. And no, Sim ain't next to me. I'm all by myself in the studio today, but we have Sai with us today. How you doing, Sai? Another day in paradise?
Another one. Yeah, brilliant. How many more circus days do we have with this club? But yes, I'm here. I'm excited as always, and let's go.
Yeah, I suspect it'll be quite a few days left of the circus act to come, to be honest. And talking of the circus act, we're going to be talking a bit more on Fabio Paratici today. There's been a bit of a snippets from Ali Gold, from Sami Mokbel, and from Charlie Eccleshare. So we'll go one by one. We'll start off with Ali Gold, and he said investigations into the alleged issues at Juventus have been ongoing for months before Fabio became working for Tottenham in June 2021. Either Spurs failed to do their due diligence or simply hoped it would all blow over. In the days after his ban, he was first handed out in January. Agents visiting Hotspur Way or meeting with the club were taken aback to find Paratici not only present but leading the discussions with them. There are many more battles to come for Fabio. On top of the various investigations, reports from Italy indicate that recent seasons at Juventus are also being looked into now. Appoint, sack, fix, restructure, buy, sell and repeat until something sticks. That's the Tottenham model. The sporting director structure is meant to prevent exactly that problem. Yet, if Paratici does end up having to step away from his duties, then much of what the Italian has created is expected to be ripped up and built all over again, which is it's absolutely nuts, this whole thing. Sami Mokbel saying Paratici has jetted back to England to face the growing uncertainty over his future developments, over his future at Spurs are likely to accelerate now as he is back in the country. Fabio has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing, but his future at the club is now in major doubt nonetheless. And last but not least, Charlie Eccleshare says that multiple sources have told The Athletic that Chairman Daniel Levy was warned numerous times by people inside and outside of Tottenham that he should be careful with the appointment of Fabio, and that it should come back, and that it will come back to haunt him. At the very least, Levy would have known, or should have known, the investigation was ongoing, and yet he pressed on with the appointment regardless. In the months since Paratici was banned from Italian football, the Tottenham hierarchy has barely paid any attention to the case. Very little has been said or done, and it's been the case of carrying on and hoping it will just blow over. It's just mental, all this, Sai. I mean, how can they have such little foresight, such little thought into any of this process that's been going on?
It's mad, isn't it? I think, like, I can't remember exactly when all the initial kind of conversations came out about this whole Paratici and Juventus.
I think it was around November time.
Yeah, and it can only really happen to us, couldn't it? Like, this whole roller coaster continues to like bombard us with nonsense. And for me, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because Daniel Levy is so stringent on everything. We know he is, like, for many years, whether people agree or not agree. You know, the way he runs the tight ship and, you know, monetary side of things is incredible.
I think it's just factual at this point.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's just like, when you're interviewing people, like, I don't know what happens at football clubs, but it's probably fairly similar processes, obviously, elsewhere. You do due diligence with, like, background checks and things like this, referees, references, all this kind of stuff. And I don't know how that works, who gave a reference for his Juventus time, or maybe they don't do things like that. But either way, it's kind of like a bizarre situation, because in foresight or hindsight, it might have been, like, quite difficult to even apprehend something like this happening. If it's what I would believe to be very, very closed doors information, and probably a tight-knit group of small amount of individuals between Juventus and himself and probably a couple of others, to keep it under wraps, to be like, oh, maybe this will blow over, or the investigation side. But maybe there's just not a protocol in place that's like, even when those things were going on, I'm sure the investigation side would have started way beyond November when they announced it. And then perhaps there's no process or platform for clubs or whoever does these decisions to log in or something and go, right, what's going on in FIFA right now? Like, what are they saying? Is anyone in a bad situation, or should we or shouldn't we be hiring this person because there's hidden things we don't know? So it's obviously not happening, or that hasn't been checked. It may not even exist. I know there's probably an expert out there somewhere that knows more than we do, but it's just mental, isn't it? And I'd like to think then, honestly, I know I'm against Daniel all the time and stuff most of the time, but I'd like to think that if he knew, he would not have gone ahead with this. I'm just envisioning, like, in the next few months, it's going to come out in the open that actually Daniel Levy and everyone was aware, and they just thought, oh, let's just carry on anyway because it's not proven guilty or anything like that. There's an investigation at the end of the day. It's being appealed. Like, I'm a believer, obviously, of things like guilty unless proven, etc. But from that principle, obviously, something's majorly going on here, and now it's going to loop back to this whole conversation about who's in Tottenham's been in charge of all this kind of side of things and not done that due diligence in the background. And if not, and if it's totally innocent, why on earth is there not a protocol to find out this kind of thing in advance? But yeah, looping back, it just has to happen to us, doesn't it? Of course.
It's classic. It's absolutely classic. And, they're saying that these investigations were going on well before he joined Tottenham. So surely they had to know about it. And not only were they going on well before Tottenham, once it all came to light once again in October, November time, Spurs just decide to bury their heads in the sand and I don't get it. And there's so many different opportunities that they had to sack him as well. Like throughout that time, they could have done it in October, November time when it first came about. Could have done it when Conte walked out the door as well, or they've got rid of Conte. So I mean, there's plenty of times where they could have stamped their authority and actually made a change, but they're still to this day, even with that the announcement that came out on the website yesterday or 2 days ago, just completely burying their heads in the sand. And I don't understand what they're trying to achieve by doing this.
I know. I think it almost partially relates. This is the point I was making on the panel the other day, is like when those, I don't know if it was the actual financial announcement recently or the one just before that, there's a bit of a PR initiative about, all the hysteria around everyone being angry at Tottenham, and actually, that
was the response to the trust, wasn't it?
That was it. Yeah, exactly. I think that's where we had confusion on the panel the other week. But the principle is that they were just like passing on the blame to the fans, like it's actually your fault. It's nothing to do with it. And it's exactly the same principle with this. What I find staggering, and I work in marketing, I know how potentially easy it is to put something out without any thought behind it as to like how will people react, and this, that, and the other. But in this instance, right, bear in mind, since November, there's been a situation of this magnitude, and then you go and put this guy on a platform that everyone around the world can see. There's 2 million or however many odd followers there are on the Spurs YouTube channel right now, plus the magnitude of that being pulled out by Sky, TalkSport, all of these things. Yeah. And you instantly put it back into the limelight again. I'm not saying that FIFA haven't stopped thinking about this for the last, 6 months or so.
Yeah.
But when you go and do something like that, put them on a platform, the iconic guy, Paratici, going, oh yeah, we've got to do all these advancements in the next few games. We've got 10 games left. I'm here to oversee all this stuff. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? And then lo and behold, within 24 hours, oh, hang on a minute. FIFA are watching this, probably laughing, going, oh, shit, we forgot about this. Yeah, we need to oh, yeah, we need to bring him up on this again and then go and ban him for the whole entire world. This is the logic, and it comes back to my point about strategy, and that's to totally understand from a marketing perspective, it can be quite easy. At the end of the day, content managers, digital managers, whatever, can do this thing quite easily, whoever their management is. But at the same time, common sense, it should ideally kick in to be this guy's under scrutiny, he's already been investigated, but we're going to just put a YouTube video out to say that he's business as usual. It's the same old day. And look what's happened. And that's what's staggering, because then it loops all the way back around again to what is the strategy of this football club? What on earth, who even signed this off? And they've kept it on there, I think, as well, which is even more crazy. And it's oh, no one will notice this either, but it's still there. And it's what on earth's going on? So this guy's banned. He can't do anything, but he's portraying what we need to do for the next game. This is why, and I know we have the WhatsApp group and stuff. There's a part of me that's I need to stop worrying about it. I need to stop thinking about this. I'm going mad. This is mental. This is actually mental. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Ben. It's obviously gone on way before November. And that's where I'm looping back around, because I'm not an expert in that field, like to understand, like there must be a protocol somewhere.
Yeah, it has to be.
Like
There has to be.
Yeah, like DBS checks and this, that, and the other in the real world. Surely there's something where clubs go on and go, right, is this background matching up? Is there something that we don't know about? Surely at that level, especially from a finance perspective.
You're talking about a multi-billion pound company here. Multi-billion pound company.
Exactly. And at numbers level, we're talking about finance. If I go to a fintech job or any finance job, you have to have DBS checks. You have to have background checks for, money laundering, fraud, and all the other stuff as well. Surely there's something there. And if not, FIFA need to look at themselves and realise, like, why on earth have we not got this in place? And that's probably the only advantage that Tottenham have as a club over these last few weeks, is to turn around and say, we had no idea, or like, you haven't given us enough time, or any protocols or anything like that. And we know FIFA's not the best of organisations. I mean, God, let's be realistic here. They're not exactly the best people in the world with their fraud.
Imagine being done by FIFA for fraud.
Unbelievable, isn't it? It's like it's hypocrisy at its finest. Like, but yeah, the loop around factor of this is like, it's just a continuous circus. I'm not surprised by anything. That's why last night, when we were all messaging at midnight on the WhatsApp group, and I was like, just before I go to bed, I'm just checking. No one's left, and there's no other people being banned for anything, so I can just go to sleep. And it was the only night this week, I think, that hasn't had something like that. Absolutely. Yeah,
tonight's another night, Si. But in terms of
10 p.m.
In terms of Daniel Levy, though, if he employed someone to hire Paratici, right, this guy would be sacked already. He'd probably be sacked before Paratici. So why isn't Daniel being held accountable for all these errors that he makes time and time again, year after year?
Because he's the top man there.
That's the problem. That's the biggest problem at this football club, clearly.
Yeah, and ironically, actually, with the conversation with Sean earlier, on messages and stuff, is that principle that Joe Lewis is the owner. He probably doesn't have a massive interest. We know he doesn't. He's been to like 1 or 2 games in 20 odd years. Yeah, he doesn't even know what color our shirts are or anything. Like, and it's basically like, it's an investment. It's an asset. This is the world we live in today. I'm not going to go into a big deep dive of that conversation. It is what it is. But the ultimate thing is, Daniel Levy has made that man a lot of money, and he makes himself a lot of money, and he dictates everything. And who on earth is going to come up to Daniel Levy right now and say, yeah, that's pretty unacceptable. You're gone, mate. It's not. There's no one. Yeah. He's got himself into the finest position possible at that club, where he can turn around and say, yeah, it was a mistake, or this, that, and the other. But the books are in black. The money's flowing in. What more do you want? It's happened. We might have to pay a fine. So be it. Whatever. We pay 15-20 million per manager that we hire and sack a few months. What difference does it make? So, that criteria is simple in my head. But again, it's just that principle of like, is the time of this ownership coming to its tethers? It's becoming embarrassing. It's becoming a circus. But I know full well that we can go and pick out another owner or thoughts about a new owner. The fact of the matter is, this guy's making a lot of money for himself and the club. We can't deny that. And arguably, football isn't first to an extent anymore from what we want it to be. So it makes it really frustrating. But absolutely, and I've said this years ago, and many years ago, if Daniel Levy and most of that Tottenham board were in any other job, they wouldn't last weeks, they wouldn't last months. And they've gone on and on because they tick the box.
22 years.
That's all it is. Simple. Yeah. So that's kind of like the answer to it, really. And there is no alternative unless someone comes up with £5-6 billion, which is not going to happen in this economy right now. Yeah, it's crazy. Don't know what to say more about it.
Yeah, it's very, very frustrating being a Tottenham fan right now, that's for sure. And the next thing I'm going to bring up is another frustration about this football club, and that is the academy. Ali Gold has been talking about it. He says Conte's time was difficult for the academy's development squad, as the under-21s would often lose players at the last minute for their coaching sessions, or sometimes on the morning of youth matches, to take roles as a static 11 in first team training. The gap between the academy and the first team has never been bigger. There is a real disconnect between the two. And when you're looking at all the top teams around England right now, Manchester United got players like Rashford, Garnacho, other players in their first team that have been through the youth. Arsenal, team full of them, Bukayo Saka and the rest of them. Chelsea, Mason Mount, Reece James, a few others as well. Liverpool, Harvey Elliott and a few others that they've got coming up. Bacetic coming through the ranks there. Man City, you even got Phil Foden, Cole Palmer, these kind of players. At Tottenham, the last one to break in was Harry Kane.
Yeah.
It's mental to think about it.
Yeah.
Like, what is going on with this pathway from the academy to the first team? What is going wrong here?
Yeah, we must be coming up to nearly, if not already, a 10-year anniversary of that whole training facility and academy being like re-enhanced. And, you know, Harry Kane, you could argue Skip. I think Skip's a brilliant player.
Skip's fantastic. The last one.
You obviously got Tanganga. Some of these players just need chances, first of all. And, you know, some of them might not have that ability. That's why you go on loan. You go and learn, you trade, all this kind of stuff. You know, big advocate of Dane Scarlett down here in Portsmouth. I've watched him many times this season, and he's got some incredible talent and some incredible opportunities in the future. He's still got a long way to go with many different attributes and whatnot. But the point being is that there is a lack of them. And ironically, actually, the conversation I was going to bring up in our chat earlier was this hysteria around, you know, these players coming through and the money that's being made from them. And I think there was an interesting article towards the back end of last year or something about how much money Tottenham is making off their academy. And it's quite staggering, the numbers of these players that don't make it, but they get sold on, and the sell-on fee then adds on over time, over 5, 10, 50, however long the career is, obviously. I think Marcus Edwards was one of the prime examples of that, of, you know, failing to get through to our team for whatever reason that was. And at the time, probably Harry Kane was building and everything like that. Goes off in stages of the different clubs, and the clubs breaking in a few million here and there. And you think, well, okay, is it worth like the 2 million? Well, that's free money. It's free money. You put these players in the academy. It's just a churning system. So you can kind of tick that box in the sense like it is generating money. But as a fan, I don't really care. I want to see players coming through, like the old days of Ledley King, for example, and making a massive effort, getting the chances. I remember when Ledley King and I think it was Alton Felwell at the time, or Anthony Gardner, were very young, and they got just thrown in. I think it was Liverpool away in '99 or something stupid like that.
Yeah,
I remember it. I remember it specifically because I was like, oh, okay, they're just throwing someone in there. Not knowing who Ledley was at the time, obviously an absolute great and king right now, hence the name as well. But like the point being is that I would say over this 10 years, it's kind of unacceptable that we would argue that there's probably four. Harry Winks had probably a great start and maybe faded off for whatever reason.
Yeah, it was like Ryan Mason, Nabil Bentaleb as well.
Yeah. And I mean, when Pochettino first started, all those players that did come through, and that's the argument of the kind of manager we want next. Someone that goes, okay, I see 4 or 5 players in our academy team. You know, Alfie Devine, for example, Harvey White, incredible. They're going to be phenomenal. There's 2 other players that I've written down as well because I watched them quite a bit on the old Spurs play thing. Moore at the back, he's going to develop, I think, really well. And Mundell's been doing really well.
Actually, it's funny that you mentioned Romain Mundell because apparently he is as of today, just been promoted to a fully first team player.
Oh, interesting.
And the club, it says here, the club delighted with his development this season with a string of standout performances for the under-21. His contract does expire at the end of the season, but they're currently in talks to extend that.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I think they'll probably use that as a bit of a narrative to try and force him to sign something because he's incredibly talented. I know it's very easy to pick that out in those kind of like age groups and stuff. Like, there's a lot to do and a lot to learn, of course, but it's like he's ticking those boxes in those categories of under 18s, under 21s. And I've watched him a lot. And I've seen him as well. I don't know if anyone has noticed, but I know the under 21s do incorporate into the first team quite a lot in training and stuff. But he's been very involved and included in that more recently. I don't know whether that was a Conte decision or like just a general natural progression, but he's a player that stands out. So I think there's massive opportunity there for it to happen. And it arguably, on the flip side, is this could be a great option and an area of opportunity for the right kind of manager to come in right now, where some of our players are aging. We perhaps don't have the transfer budgets that we think as fans have in our heads, or at least we've got like 250 million players on loan or whatever that we need to shift or do something with, right? Madness. But you've got to think of all these variables, and actually these new academy players that are coming through. If the right manager comes in and identifies them or says, yeah, actually brilliant, and gets rid of some of this deadwood and replaces them with academy, I think fans will have a lot more patience with academy players, even if they're just thrown in and we're frustrated because we want ready-made players like Conte did, and we want this player, world-class player. We don't have the money to do that. We don't have the power that the bigger clubs have. So this could be an alternative for Spurs fans to go, well, our expectation now of thinking you're getting all these big managers in goes up here, but actually let's go back to reality. Bring in like when Pochettino first started and have some academy players come in, because I'm a big advocate for that. And your expectation, I don't say it comes down because I think that's disrespectful to the young players that are coming through, but your expectation then becomes more realistic, and then you can build on that psychologically moving forward, because you've got a mix of great couple of world-class players, some great players, and then you've got the rubbish ones. But the academy ones can come in and replace that and give us an initiative of passion and enthusiasm that actually these guys want to make it work for themselves and the club. So I think it's a really interesting timing of all this for potentially knowing who the next manager is. They might have an idea or whatever, but maybe creating infrastructure where, okay, whoever comes in needs to operate with what we've got here. So it's a really topsy-turvy topic. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't think enough has been done. To your point, is in 10 years or however long it's been open for, it's not provided enough. And no disrespect to the coaches or anything at those levels, I'm sure they're doing a great job. I generally think a lot of it's to do with that first team integration. It's like a barrier, and it's like we don't want to give them the opportunity because we're focused too much on top four. We can't risk putting one or two like Liverpool do to benefit that opportunity. So it's a bit of a catch-22, but how else are they going to learn, and how else are they going to progress? And honestly, I really wish earlier this season they just adopted that philosophy of bringing in academy players, because I'm sick and tired of the crap players that we've got. Let someone else have a go until you've got your strategy in place for the next summer, or the next summer, who knows when, and
or in 10 years' time.
Try it out. Like, what have you got to lose? We already know we're not in a position to get first or second. We're going to struggle anyway. Let the young players come through and learn something. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely are behind that 100%. And I was watching some of the training before, and there was actually a clip of Mundell just completely skinning Perisic alive. It was great to watch. Really was great to watch. But let's move on. Let's talk about Sonny, Heung-min Son. A journalist out in Spain called Ramon Salmuri says that Barcelona are searching the market for a left winger, and Heung-min Son is among the options that the club like. Can you envisage Spurs selling Heung-min Son this summer? Not
particularly. Two reasons. I think Son has had a bit of a tough season because of positional play and things like that. I think some players are not necessarily entitled to, but do have off times. We've got to remember the great times that he has had. And there is a link that suggests that absolutely he could do more for like his team play and everything like that, not just this season, but seasons before. But ultimately, you'd rather have him in your team than not. But I also think in this whole grand scheme of things, of finances and things like that, you don't want to be losing a player like that from a commercial aspect. And I hate to talk about that as players as like entities and assets in that particular format, but that is the realism of this, that Son pulls in a significant magnetism of Korean fans, but also the commercial aspect of partnerships, the commercial aspect of a Korean player in general, South Korean, sorry. And that is massive. It's like something we perhaps can't comprehend or actually even match up, that actually a lot of this finance that we do have is coming from things like this and these kind of strategic decisions of a player. I remember when Ferguson at United brought in, what was his name?
Sunji Park.
Yeah, and obviously a great player, but the commercial aspect that came from that was huge. And it was probably a repeated pattern, like it is with many clubs, with many nationalities and stuff. So I think it would be really stupid at this moment in time, because again, back to that point about academy and stuff as well. You need players like that for encouragement of those next wave of players and to keep a bit of momentum of what we're trying to hopefully pull back is that Tottenham ethos of the way we really want to play, particularly from those Pochettino areas. They're the kind of players that have seen it all, done it all, albeit no trophies and everything like that. But from a Tottenham perspective, it is important, in my opinion, to keep that momentum. And a highly regarded senior player. He's not had the greatest of form this year, but his personality makes a huge difference in that team. I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping it's nonsense, because I'm a massive Son advocate. We have to stand by players when they're not, playing too well or should be playing so well. For what he's given to us over years, we owe that. There does come a time, of course, when a player gets too old, or we have to, like with Jan Vertonghen and all that, for example, where we go, okay, yeah, I think it's getting a bit silly now, but I still think he's got a lot more to offer. And I don't want to see another European competitor potentially, and if we do get Champions League or whatever Europe we're in, to give our best players away. That's not how we're going to build, is it? So go and shaft off the rubbish players first, and then we'll see what
and then we'll talk about Sonny.
Yeah, exactly. Let's leave those ones till last, hopefully. Yeah.
Next up, we're going to talk about the manager situation. We've got two names to talk about for the update. First up, let's talk about Vincent Kompany. Ken Lawrence from The Sun saying that Vincent Kompany has emerged as a leading contender to become Tottenham's new manager. The Mail are reporting that Vincent Kompany has become a leading candidate to take over as the new Tottenham manager. And Paul O'Keefe saying, from what I heard, it's very much his way or no way. Resigned from his previous job because he felt there was too much interference from above. So imagine him and Daniel Levy. But exactly. in terms of Vincent Kompany, obviously he's doing an astonishing job with Burnley at the moment. He's changed Burnley from that Sean Dyche style of play to an expansive team, smashing it at the top of the championship. I think they need 2 more wins or something like that to seal their top spot or promotion. I think he is destined to go on to bigger and better things, Vincent Kompany. But for me, it always feels like he's always going to be waiting for that City job. And if he comes here and does a good job for a year or two, and Pep does decide to leave Man City, is he always going to be a shoo-in for that Man City job? And do we want? And do we want someone that's going to use us as a stepping stone?
Yeah, sorry. I think that is probably going to be their number one target, isn't it, for City after that's gone, just from...
Or him or Arteta,
Yeah, I mean, Arteta would be very interesting, wouldn't it, to pull away from Arsenal at this moment in time, and over the next couple of years, I'm sure they'll continue to progress, unfortunately. But, like, the reason, the sort of thought around Kompany is there's a lot of, like, upcoming managers, and it's getting that balance right, in my opinion, of, like, progressing at the right time. Gerrard, Lampard, for example, perhaps prime examples of that, with great football knowledge, great experience in the game. Managerial, they obviously had some form of intuitive aspect to it, otherwise they wouldn't have been chosen as managers. But like, I think like the stars like shine somewhere else, or the city glows there, and you're like, oh, I must go now, because it might never happen again. When actually, perhaps, and I might be speaking out of turn because I'm not a manager myself or anything, but in my head, the ideal way is to progress your way up to that level. But equally, I know from a working perspective, if someone comes and dangles a carrot in front of you, oh, loads more money, yes, please, and a bigger club, yes, please, I totally get it. And I feel like Kompany's in that kind of frame now, isn't he? In the sense, like, the attention's on him. He's number one in that league, and rightly so. Incredible football that they've been playing, or certainly when I've been watching some of those games this year. And it's a completely new ethos there. None of that, like, last ditch effort, boot the ball up from the goalkeeper and hope for the best. It's practical play and very tactical. And I think obviously he's learned a lot of that at City. He's learned a lot of it in his career thus far as a manager. And it is exciting to see. I'd love to see new managers coming through and whatever. And are we too arrogant to say, oh, he's not going to be good enough for us? Like, we need someone bigger. We need someone better. Well, who's out there? First of all, who wants to come to Tottenham in the first place, because it's an absolute mess? And secondly, like, the quality of manager. We've already tried the massive managers. It hasn't worked. And the ethos of Levy, exactly as you just said, the egotistic levels of managers and stuff like that just won't work. And Kompany, I do believe, is a very strong character. I can't imagine him taking any nonsense off Daniel Levy or anything like that, and being very clear. I'm hoping for his sake he does his due diligence. It's not difficult. Just read the papers. You'll see how ridiculous it is. But I'm pretty sure he would acknowledge that this is probably not the club for me. And honestly, like, I don't think it's a question of, oh, do we want him? I think it's more of a question of, like, does he actually want to come to us? And even at his early career in the managerial stage, I think he's got a huge future, and that will play a big part. Because I think a lot of managers probably question whether they want to come to Spurs in general anyway. But from someone like Kompany, with his stature as a player and as a person, not saying he's got arrogance or ego like Jose or Conte ever had, but he's still got his head switched on to be like, I don't think this is going to work. Like, he's obviously got a pattern at Burnley that's really working, and a structure and a strategy. And why on earth would he come somewhere where he's probably going to be dictated to as to what sandwiches is he allowed to eat, or like what players did he have to pick this week, all of this kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean? So I can't really see it happening. I wouldn't say no to it from my side or as a Spurs fan, but I just can't see him coming. And looping back, I don't know what's going to happen with our managers. I personally don't care. I really don't care, because I generally believe nothing's going to change, and it's going to be the same circle around it. We might get some better, slightly entertaining football. We definitely would if Kompany came in, better than what we've seen, for sure. But I can just see the same thing in 12 months, 18 months' time, the same conversation, the same fan mentality kicking in, like, because the players aren't good enough, because of this, because of that. But on the other side of that, looping back, all these kind of topics actually relate very well together, whoever chose the agenda, is like,
thank you.
The element of these academy players, that it could be something that he looks at and goes, actually, there's a good blend here of some couple world-class players, some okay players that can still do a good job, hopefully.
Some terrible players.
Yeah, exactly. He'll probably want to know what happens with those dead ones and the lone ones that come back. He probably comes into the training ground thinking, oh, it's a good group of players, and all of a sudden a big busload of 20-odd other players come forward and go, hey guys, we're back. Like, who the hell are you? That kind of thing. So it's really interesting to see. And back to that point earlier about him as an individual, I'd like to see him, how he would react with Burnley in the Premier League first before he made a big jumping club decision like that. And I think he needs to, because no disrespect to the Championship or something, it's very different. We've seen many great young managers or up and coming managers do, like Scott Parker, for example, all did great in the Championship, come to the Premier League, they don't know what to do. Or the players aren't good enough and it doesn't match up with the club, whatever. So that's what I'd like to see him do from a personal level. But I'm not his guidance or blue fairy or anything. He needs to work that out himself. But that's where I see it with him for sure, particularly.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it will be very interesting to see how he does next season in the Premier League with Burnley. But I mean, I agree in a sense that I would like to see him through the door, and I think he'd be an exciting appointment, young up-and-coming manager. But it just brings me back to that point where I just feel he'll just be, maybe not intentionally, maybe even unintentionally, but using us as a stepping stone to get back into that Man City. Because I think he's nailed on for that Man City job after Pep goes.
Yeah, you're always going to get that with a lot of the managers, aren't you? Like, they have a goal or a dream in their head, and rightly so. Like, that's their career, that's their life. It's probably like Lampard, exactly that point of like, I want to manage Chelsea one day, and all of a sudden an envelope comes through the door and says, yeah, we've got this opportunity for you. He's obviously going to take it. In an ideal world, he should probably have progressed for 5, maybe 10 years first, and then gone and done it. But maybe it's difficult to go backwards now and try again. But yeah, I think you're exactly right. It will be a stepping stone, and that's kind of like this whole Conte contract and all these other contracts. Like, you'll know indefinitely at the beginning if Kompany did come in and he signs a 18-month, 2-year plan. You're like, well, we know what's going to happen there, then, don't we? If it's a 5-year contract, you're going, oh, okay, this guy's relatively serious, and let's see what we can do with it. So there's a balancing act, isn't it? And like what will actually come out of it remains to be seen.
Yeah, where it's going to stop, nobody knows.
Yeah.
And last bit of stuff for the Tottenham update, and it's a manager called Arne Slot of Feyenoord. Again, top of the league out in Holland in the Eredivisie. The Telegraph out in Holland are saying that Conte's departure is very good news for Arne Slot, because I know he's on a list at Tottenham and he's very open to the role. And Arne Slot's a very interesting one. Young manager, 44 years of age, ending the Ajax dominance this year. It looks as though they are quite a number of points clear, playing unbelievable football, scoring an unbelievable amount of goals. I was speaking to Stel actually as well, like a week or two ago, and he said that this guy should be our number one choice, and if we're looking for a project, he should be heading it. I mean, I don't know too much about him, not going to lie, but he does have a good reputation about him.
Yeah, I think like you, my knowledge of him specifically isn't massive, but from the way his teams play and what I have watched at Feyenoord this year, or at least this season, sorry, has been really exciting to watch. And again, it's like that kind of like transfer of expectation. Like I personally like the Dutch football, and I love the whole ethos of the fans and the stadiums and everything about it, really. The managers that have been coming through, certainly in the last few years and historically, very tactical driven, obviously. And I think that's something that he's definitely imprinted in Feyenoord. But again, it's just that transition of aspect of, okay, the Dutch league, that's a different kettle of fish to the Premier League, irrespective of a Champions League, Europa League level. On paper, it's very different. And you could argue Ten Hag has done an incredible job. Like, he's put his stamp on there. He's taken no nonsense from anyone. Shafted like their legendary player. He wasn't adhering to their system, and you need that. And I think he's got those attributes, but I also think he's exactly what Stel's probably cottoned onto, is that attribute of developing players. And again, back to your great agenda that you put together, when you're talking about all of these individual connecting points, in a managerial decision, the ego one's not going to work anymore. You need a project manager, literally for the next few years, 4 or 5 years, like we have with Pochettino. If it's Pochettino, fantastic. I'd rather just watch that than I have the last year. But if you're trying to cycle in a new manager, this kind of manager is top notch. Leeds, I think Leeds tried to get him a few months ago when they were having managerial issues. And, Leeds are a relatively good, decent playing team when they get going. And I could see him doing a really good job there. But I also think with the flair aspect that Tottenham was usually about, and certainly was through the Pochettino era in the first few seasons, that's the kind of manager that would really match up with it. And that balancing act of senior players, academy players, potentially finding players with his network or his own managerial team that he might have, to say, actually, I've identified players you don't need to spend loads of money on. We'll do this strategically in the nice Levy cheap way, but there'd be a decent acquisition as a player to develop. That's what I think we need. I'm not saying that he's the definitive answer to it, but out of all the names I've heard the last few weeks, I've sort of sat there going, well, they're great managers, but I can't see them working at Tottenham, either because of Daniel Levy or the way that we're trying to achieve a way of playing football, the path that we're trying to do. I know external fans will laugh like, well, what is the Tottenham way? And, in my head, it's, the enthusiasm, the excitement, the wingers running deers majestically up and down the wings and everything like this, and actually scoring some goals and not turning up at heart, all of that great stuff, right? And I think that's something that's missing. But a manager of his kind of, I wouldn't say caliber, but his way and his ethos could really work with us. As I said, I don't think it's necessarily the definitive answer, but that kind of mold of a manager, that kind of, not necessarily future proofing, but someone that could come in and assess what we've got and build something from what we've got, as well as the things that we've got coming out of the academy and potentially that we could bring in on that kind of level. So yeah, it's a really interesting one. It's going to be a merry-go-round for however long now, isn't it? I don't even know if we're going to do the decision before the summer or if it's going to be announced in the summer.
I reckon it'll come after the season.
Not necessarily concerns me, but season ticket holders over the last few years have not necessarily diminished because they always tend to get replaced. I was offered 7 season tickets last year. I was like, I've only just got my one. What on earth am I supposed to do with these? There's literally 5 or 6 around me, and I was like, I've never heard of that in the Park Lane side of things before. It's mental. So you imagine now, after even more of a circus the last 12, 18 months, I don't know where the decision's coming, because people are going to be like, what the hell's going on? Like, we don't even know who our manager is. We don't even know what players are going to be here. Do I even want to come and watch this?
And
like,
they're talking about a price hike as well.
Well, yeah, brilliant, isn't it? Yeah, great idea. That is, like, unbelievable. What's the reasoning behind that? Probably some other nonsense. And
it's just inflation rubbish, or probably.
Yeah, of course it is. But he'll still take his 500 grand or whatever it is a year, like bonuses and stuff. It's all good. So I think, yeah, it's a really interesting topic overall, because I'm intrigued. Do they announce a manager early and still continue with Stilley and say starting in the summer, out of respect for, if it is him, Feyenoord, out of respect to let him see the season out and stuff? And how does that react with the existing team? To be like, oh, I can't bother to play anymore. I'm just going to wait till the next one comes in. All these things, mate. It's like I've just fed up with the headache, and I don't know what the players think. Like Harry Kane must have come back from international duty and going, "What am I doing? What am I actually doing with my life?" Like, and as a fan, you think this every day. God knows what they think. But it's just trying to now piece it together, isn't it? And timing of everything. And are we actually going to go around a merry-go-round of names
for the next
few months and not get anywhere? And then we'll end up with some other nonsense. Who knows, mate? It's just
Nuno 2.0 era incoming.
Unbelievable. What more can we say about it?
But Sire, I think that's enough of Tottenham stressing us out. I think you should just go to Gunwharf, have a Malibu, and relax for the weekend. But
pina colada this weekend.
Pina colada this weekend, yeah.
Yeah, very nice. Alchemist and Gunwharf, if anyone's down.
It's a bit rainy for a pina colada, isn't it?
It was raining so much last weekend, but it was a very nice outdoor area. And I thought I was on holiday. To be honest. The DJ was playing. It's raining like mad outside. I've got my pina coladas, and yeah, I was on holiday for at least 2 hours. And that was it.
Happy days. Well, enjoy your weekend, Si. Thank you so much for coming and joining me today, and we'll speak soon. Big up to Si, everyone.
Come on, you Spurs.
And like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, come on, you Spurs.
Oh yeah, did it too early.